G'day. Here at the Regenerative Journey, part of our goal is to educate our followers on the benefits of knowing where their food comes from and the knock-on effects this can have on our health, our environment and our future generations. Understanding the connection has never been more important, and in the spirit of this endeavour, we have teamed up with Highland Beef Pastoral Company, a grass-fed beef supply chain servicing the growing US grass-fed consumer market, who I'm excited to announce are our Season 6 show sponsors. Essentially, this Australian-based business places cattle on their member graziers' properties at no expense to the farmer and provides competitive returns for every kilo of beef produced, allowing their graziers to focus on improving their businesses in a capital-free and risk-free environment. Highland Beef graziers are some of the best grass and animal managers in the country. Livestock are humanely and lovingly cared for while on their farms, and customers are guaranteed a very high-quality, regeneratively managed grass-fed and finished product with full transparency from farm to plate. If you're interested in finding out more about this program, visit hbpastoral.com.au/Charlie Arnott.
I do feel very, very passionate about men and men's health. And we do somewhat take our health for granted, but life is fleeting and we don't have a lot of time here. And when something like that happens, it makes you really appreciate the fact that how short our time here is, and I was given a second chance.
That was David Carter, and you're listening to The Regenerative Journey. From wherever we are, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia, recognising their continuing connection to this land, its waterways, the stars in the skies since time immemorial. We pay our respects to the elders, knowledge holders, and to all the generations of First Nations peoples who have nurtured their unceded sovereign lands for over 80,000 years and continue to do so today.
G'day, I'm your host Charlie Arnott, an 8th generational Australian regenerative farmer. And in this podcast series, I'll be diving deep and exploring my guests' unique perspectives on the world so you can apply their experience and knowledge to cultivate your own transition to a more regenerative way of life.
Welcome to The Regenerative Journey with your host Charlie Arnott.
G'day, welcome back to the Regenerative Journey, and as I again sit here at the farm at Byron Bay in a reasonably echoey room, I reflect on COP27 that was just not too long ago. You guys are probably hearing this some weeks after I've recorded it, but so I'm not sure where that's all headed since this thing. Probably not very far, to be honest. I don't actually know what good comes of a lot of those talk fests, global talk fests. I know a few people who went. You know, good, bad, the ugly. Don't have time to go into it all, and I'm not there, so I can't give you a first-hand, blow-by-blow description of it all. However, I'll be interested to see what comes out of all this. I did speaking with Murray Richardson of Highland Beef the other day about one of the outcomes was that there's an expectation of the world, of those that count, that the consumer, the end consumer, and businesses who are actually retailing take up some of the slack of the initiatives to save the world. Now, that's a roundabout way of saying basically, look, there are some businesses already doing this a lot, and certainly the guys in the United States that Highland Beef supply to are doing that, and it's something that they hadn't probably thought too much about just yet. They are absolutely providing, somewhat security for farmers back here in Australia who are supplying and fattening the Highland beef. So it's an interesting thing. There's a call out across the world that there's got to be more accountability, and I totally understand and get that, and I think that's a great thing. How that plays out, what does accountability look like? What is it? How will retailers or how will end users producers, the people who eat it and the people who are retailing at that end, sort of the far end, opposite end of the farmers, really, what their obligations are or accountability to to the food system and to getting back to, well, you know, how that food produced on farms, ethically, environmentally conscientious, and yada yada. It'll be interesting to see. I have touched on before, you know, my thoughts on, well, where does this all go when the accountability might go a little bit spare, a bit over the top, whereby people are sort of, what's imposed upon them is some sort of a quota for, you know, the emissions that they are directly or indirectly responsible for. More indirectly, like if you buy a food item and there's some emissions that's been calculated for that particular food item, say beef, and I think that's probably something that's going to happen, you know, what's probably on the top of the list for people that are wanting to kind of verify and quantify the emissions, and it has already basically been done, but it's so site-specific, so many variables there, that, you know, you're going to be clocking up emissions kind of, you know, hit a quota, hit a time where you've gone beyond a quota in a month or a week or a day or something, and then there's something imposed on you. I've mentioned it before, and I know you're going, oh, here he goes again. But I just, you know, it's one of those things. I'm just going to put it out there and see. I don't think it's happening tomorrow, but a lot of these things that kind of, you know, are imposed on the world, as we've had a number of them in the last couple of years, it's that boiling frog thing. It's like, oh, no, that's okay. No, I'm happy to sign that. Oh, I'm happy to have something measured or, you know, sort of monitored. So really, I mean, that's the whole. Even those things where you go to a supermarket and they say like not frequent flyer, do they? Sort of something or others, or they go, you want to use your card, and then they're just sort of, you know, rounding up information on you and what you consume and so on. So that's sort of like a pretty old and reasonably established one that everyone's generally used to. But, you know, where does it all finish? I don't know. But what I do want to talk about, we're staying on the topic of beef, is, just before we do that, I've got a couple more. Last week I did rabbit it on about some lovely feedback we'd been given from people. And once again I've gone to the podcast, Apple Podcast in this case, website or more my podcast, just to see what some nice people have said. And again, I failed to actually open the things up enough to then actually read you the whole thing. But here we go. I'll try one. Charlie brings an hearty humour. I probably do talk about too many rumours. Charlie brings an hearty humour to the conversation of regeneration, renewal and stewardship of our land and the earth, full of practical wisdom, inspiration and joy in the gift and grace of living on the land, rural, semi-rural and urban. This is where I didn't finish. A vital conversation and connection for country folk and their, I'm going to say it's city cousins. It does go on. There's another lovely one. Wonderful podcast with so much useful information. As someone with chronic conditions caused by modern farming practices, I love this podcast and am inspired to find ways to support regenerative farming to help our climate, the environment and our health. Well done, team, and well done you, the grass-fed carnivore, with your little thing over there, for saying such lovely things to me, to us. Oh, my posture's terrible. Looking at the video in the on the machine in front of me there of my good self. So now to David Carter. He is one of the herd managers for Highland Beef. Caught up with David at his home in Scone. He does own a little bit of land still. However, what he does do is he oversees the management, so to speak, of a number of different properties in that region, heading sort of from Scone all the way up near Tamworth and out west of farmers who he doesn't manage their farms, but he certainly oversees the induction and sort of the general management of the animals that Highland Beef place on their farmer properties. That's his current job. He's done so many different interesting, wonderful things. We sort of get stuck into, you'll pick up his voice straight away. He's got beautiful dulcet tones, does David, and he tells a wonderful story about where that got him one day. And again, you know, a bit like the thing I just read out there, you know, it was a David's a bit of a health scare that turned him in a different direction in terms of his health and his eating, and no doubt his thinking. Really enjoyed this very casual sit in the backyard at his house in Scone, and that afternoon, straight after, actually, not afternoon, we went and visited a couple of one particular property outside of Scone that is fattening cattle for Highland beef. A beautiful, beautiful property. Loved it. Beautiful babbling brook and lush pastures and beautiful looking cattle. Nice people. David Carter and his story you'll be listening to immediately after I stop rabbiting on the regenerative journey right now. David Carter. Here he is. Okay, David Carter. Welcome to... Oh, look at this little doggy here. Welcome to the regenerative journey, and welcome to your backyard here in Scone, on the outskirts of Scone.
Thank you so much, Charlie. It's a pleasure to be with you.
We are about an hour late, aren't we? We got here. Well, I got here just a little bit after the designated hour, and sun was shining. We sussed out the spot, and the neighbour decided to start mowing his lawn.
Start mowing, yes, my word, and the aircraft flying over. So there's a few distractions, but you'll overcome those.
Well, as I said to you before, I interviewed Terry McCosker early in the year at Botanic Gardens in Brisbane, and we had to contend with mowers, tractors, construction noise, aircraft, and I was amazed at how clean it all ended up being. We've taken our headphones off so we don't actually get distracted because they're picking up all the background noise. But Reese, my editor-in-chief, my production man, he's a wizard with cleaning all this sort of stuff up. So here we are in Scone, and what I generally do, David, is take my guests to their happy place. Now, it's in their garden, their farm, their place of work. In this instance, we thought it best to do the interview in a somewhat controlled environment, apart from neighbour activities. So we're in your backyard, and the question that I'm prompted to ask is, in your case, not necessarily about your backyard, but why Scone? Why here? Is this your happy place? Is this part of the world your happy place?
Absolutely. This is very much my happy place, my backyard. I spend quite a bit of time here. I'm very proud of it. Yes, and we do have a long history here in the Upper Hunter, as I mentioned to you.
We'll get to that. Don't spoil it all, yeah.
That's okay. But this is our little sanctuary, Charlie.
Yeah.
This is where we like to
love it. Just
come and be on our own, my wife and I. That all our children have grown and doing their thing, but we like to come out here and just enjoy the peace, solitude, and the sunshine when we can get it. So,
well, the sun is shining now, which is wonderful, because you've had how much rain over the weekend?
We had 60 millimetres over the weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
It's nuts, isn't it? We've had just fitting here with my tech here. Oh, just stay up there, will you? 60 mil. It's just, we sat down in our chairs just a bit into the lawn, the newly mowed lawn.
Well, I couldn't do it over the weekend for you. I thought I'd get into it quickly this morning.
We're sitting next to a mulberry tree to set the scene, which is just mulberrying at the moment. Have you had any off that yet?
Yes, yeah. They're starting to sweeten.
They're starting to sweeten, yeah. They're a little tart at the moment, but within days, I'm sure, a bit of the sunshine. Are we allowed to tell people about this over here?
You can.
Or was that acquired anonymously somehow?
No. It was all through legal channels.
It's an amazing fire, basically a fire pit. It's a big screen that is used or was used in a coal mine of
a washery.
A washery, yeah. The Hunter. Yeah, it's going in the Hunter Valley, the northern Hunter Valley, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and Hunter Valley is known in many circles as a a lot of coal mines here, isn't there?
There's some very large ones just here at Musselbrook, just south of Scone.
How close are they to the Scone? Do they sort of
30 kilometres?
So does that cause irritation for people, or kind of a thing? Are they creeping towards Scone? Are people going, have they got an issue with it?
The Upper Hunter Shire Council have maintained a policy throughout many years now of sort of keeping coal mines at bay.
Okay.
And so they're predominantly located in the Musselbrook Shire area, but as I said, it's about 30 kilometres. At times, people can So, they say that they can smell the effects.
Really? So they can smell the coal? Or
That sulphurous smell.
Right.
It's occasioned at coal mines if we get a southerly wind blowing.
Is that because sulphur is released like that's just a part of the mining process, the sulphur's, or is that part of washing, or what is that?
Some of the mines were prone to spontaneous combustion, and in particular two, just on the proximity of the edge of Muswellbrook, they were as I said, they were prone to spontaneous combustion for many years, so the coal would ignite on
in the air,
presence of oxygen in the atmosphere. So
how'd they put that out? I guess relatively easily with that.
Bury it with clay, if they could.
Right.
If they couldn't get to it, then they just had to burn.
Really? It's a bit like I was in the States a couple of years ago. I don't know where this is going, David. I wasn't thinking we were going to talk about coal and now gas. I was in the States some years ago around LA, and the bushfires, those massive bushfires of when was that? 17, 18 over there, and knowing or understanding that there were gas leaks that they couldn't contain, and just burning for years, decades maybe even.
Yeah.
Incredible. Let's get back on track. David, let's start. We've started at Scone, lovely Scone, which is now bypassed, which I didn't bypass because I had to come into Scone and have a coffee at the bar.
Oh, the bar, did you?
Yep.
What was it like?
It was great.
Was it?
A bit slow. The lady said she made me a cappuccino first and then remembered it was a latte, so she had to redo it.
Oh, dear.
A decaf. That was fine. I actually ran into a schoolmate.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Small world.
Small world. Yeah, no, getting smaller, and we had a bit of a chat while the coffee turned up. No, it was lovely. And so Scone, here we are, and you're going to tell us about your family's connection to Scone and the district. But let's talk about you. Like, when did you appear on the scene? How far do we want to go back into your journey? And this podcast, David, is called The Regenerative Journey. It's not necessarily means that every person has to be a regenerative farmer or kind of have a compelling, amazing story of regeneration in their life or something. I find that people generally do, as people get older and they progress through life and they have their learnings and their, dare I say, failures or ups and downs, that they there is a cycle of regeneration of some sort, mind, body, spirit. It always comes out.
Yeah.
No pressure. No pressure.
No pressure whatsoever.
So where do you want to start, David? Do you want to start at, where were you born? Were you born in Scone District Base Hospital?
Yes.
You were?
But as far as, it's interesting that you mentioned regenerative farming, and well before that term was used, Trish and I, my wife, we've had our own cattle business for, probably 35 plus years now. And we were not unlike everyone, I suppose, that I knew at the time, that set stocking was the done thing.
Was a thing, yeah.
Because your father did it and your grandfather and so forth, and just about everyone else you knew did it. But after a number of years, we experimented with just putting all our cattle, or a lot of them, into one larger mob and closing our paddocks up and then moving our cattle more frequently from paddock to paddock, and that seemed to work for us quite well. So,
and when did you start doing that? Out of curiosity,
I guess probably 20 years ago.
Yep. And was that on the back of reading, seeing, understanding? Yeah, you just went, oh, hang on, I've heard about this. Well, I guess back then it was probably even termed cell grazing.
Cell grazing was the term. Yeah.
Do you remember where you?
Oh dear, sorry.
It sounded like in your front yard.
Oh dear,
oh mate, are they your neighbours?
No. Some of the local council folk, I think.
They're really bitching your right to happening here. So do you remember, have you read, saw something?
Always been an avid reader, and I did read articles initially on that, and piqued my interest, and I became more and more interested in that, and wanted to learn more. And so then once we understood the basic fundamentals of it, we decided we'd try and implement that ourselves.
And where did that happen? we've jumped away from. We've gone straight from zero to somewhere. But where did that happen in your farm, the land you were doing that on? I might put my jacket back on.
Yeah, my family had property at an area called Stewartsbrook in Maluma.
Where's that?
So it's approximately 60 kilometres east of Scone.
Okay. Yep. Is it Barrington Tops?
Correct.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So the highest peak on the Barrington Tops, Mount Barrington, is sort of the headwaters of the Stewartsbrook Valley.
Yep.
They had country there, and that's where we sort of kicked off with that. And then we acquired some further property ourselves, Trish and I, and we were doing that on our own property as well.
So let's go back. Born at Scone Base Hospital. Where did you grow up? Like where was home?
Well, Stewartsbrook predominantly.
That was
Yeah, and then Trish and I moved to Queensland many years ago, and we were up there for a few years, and then
you've just missed a big chunk of your life. Did you get married at when you were 2? No, there must be a few years between moving out there, and then so you moved out there. Life on a farm, for siblings.
Yeah, spent youth, adolescence there, and then into early 20s, and then met Trish, and as I said, we decided we'd like to see some other parts of Australia, and so we were away for a number of years, and had some businesses running, and then we sold those up and then moved back here with the view of setting up a livestock business.
This is going to be a really short interview, David, because you already jumped to.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to keep dragging you back to adolescence, family life. Did you enjoy living on the farm?
I loved it.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Family, big family, small family?
Mine was a smaller family, but part of a larger family.
Yes.
Yeah. And I guess when you come from an ancestral generational farming family, you seem to have a real attachment to that land. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yep.
And it was always part of me. I didn't think I would go anywhere else, but of course, your views do change as you age. But it's never left me. It was one of those things. Whenever I went there, if I was away and then came back, and I went back, straight away you felt this feeling of familiarity. It's something that is part of you. It made you feel at ease, de-stressed you, if you like.
And you still have the opportunity to do that because you've got some land nearby.
Yes, we do. We lease some country just here south of Scone.
Yeah,
we've had that for many, many years now. We run a small stock or stud there and a few cattle,
which we'll get back to. So you was your childhood. Did you spend it in paddocks? Were you wild child? Did you get up to mischief?
Yes.
Did you get kicked out of school? Did you go to school in Scone?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. No, not kicked out of school, but I always loved the time away from school. I was academically, I did quite well, but. I always
Were you the ducks of...
No, not quite. But I did quite well. But I loved my time, in the bush.
Yep.
And did all those normal things that all young fellows do, apart from working. Hunting and riding and, just being around animals and being part of nature.
Horses still part of your world, then?
A very big part, yeah.
And so school, upbringing on a farm, any life lessons you learned there or sort of events or things that happened that... I'm going to sneeze. Hang on. Oh.
Okay.
Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
Bloody hell.
Perhaps it's our fragrant garden.
Could, but there is something that smells beautiful. What is that? I can't. There's no flowers that jump out at me, but it is something beautiful. Any life lessons that you sort of foundational things that happened out there, understandings, thoughts, events
memories that kind of were, been foundational, pivotal?
Yes. I was the eldest, so I was always given the role of responsibility, if you like. And, it does teach you to be perhaps a little bit older than what your years are, and to take on a role of perhaps leadership. And I've always found that those traits are strongly, innately part of me. So I guess being placed into that role, it's helped me then through my life, the way that I approach things, approach people, approach projects, my mindset towards my work ethic.
Was it onerous somewhat? Did you want, I just want to be a kid and I'm being given these responsibilities, or you probably didn't have it, yeah?
At times, but it was just part of what you did. And I was always happier or happiest when I was busy. I've never been one to sort of be idle, and I've always sought out, some sort of activity to keep me active and both physically and mentally. So.
And I guess what I understand, and certainly my childhood was one of activity and usefulness. You know, I don't know many country kids who, certainly my generation, and ones I know who are still school kids who are useless. If I could be that blunt about it. I mean, you can't get away. You can't be on a farm and get away with standing around not being helpful. You get a smack in the head, or you get run over by a mob of cattle or something. You know, my father would always say, "Don't ever stand there with your hands in the pockets in the yards. Ask how you can be helped." And as I keep saying, and when I repeat it, the four most amazing, lovely words in the English language to come out of a child's mouth is, "How can I help?" You know, I'm always encouraging my kids to do that. And I think that just sets, and it's not onerous, well, it might, maybe sometimes, but for them. But I think it's a really important thing that children understand that, you know, if they want to get on in life and get on with people and jobs, and, you know, it builds resilience and it kind of, and it does, I guess, you know, create some responsibilities, because if kids ask if they can help and they get jobs get done, then parents go, "Oh, they're actually pretty good at that. Well, they're actually really helpful," you know, and then things become, it's all part of being a leader or leadership, and
absolutely,
isn't it?
Don't you think that it sets a really strong foundation for your children?
Oh, totally. Do you think there's enough of that in the world at the moment?
Oh, absolutely not.
What are your benchmarks for that? What do you see or hear, or what's where? I mean, I have to agree with you, but I'm just interested to know where do you see that play out in the world?
Trish and I have been in business now for, as I said, over 35 years, probably 38 years, something like that. Over that time, we have been employers ourselves. So apart from working for ourselves in our own business, we've also employed quite a number of people over the years. I've found that, and I don't want to be critical of many in the younger generation, but that work ethic that you and I just discussed then is not as strong, if not at all there in many of the younger people, which is a real shame. I'm not so particularly speaking of people from the land, and I don't want to, again, sound biased. We've employed a lot of people with our businesses that we've had, from towns and larger cities. And it really does highlight the difference in the way that perhaps those children have been given a grounding in life initially. And again, I don't mean to sound biased, but you know, and it does seem that is really self-evident, quite self-evident.
What do you think makes up what makes up the good grounding in a child's life? What are some of the principles, or the, you know?
Well, responsibility, as we discussed, that taking on a role, being given a role, and being able to carry out that role the way that people would expect it to be done and the way that you expect it to be done. But honesty, integrity, those leadership attributes that you and I discussed earlier. And I think just being there, that people know that they can rely upon you. So if they are somewhere else and you're working autonomously, you're on your own, that they know that they can leave you and the job will be done. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Totally. And I guess that you're right, that's not something that... I mean, for some it might be innate, and for others it may have been not bashed into them, but certainly that's all part of their upbringing. But I totally agree. I think it's really important. And
I'm not saying you can't learn those things.
No, totally. That's the other part.
I mean, you can learn those things. Everyone has the ability to do that, but whether or not they choose to take them on or want to have anything to do with them is always a challenge.
And also, I guess also in the workplace, the expectation that will happen. I think there's a lot of workplaces where, and this could go down all sorts of rabbit holes, but the expectation of like, but that's okay, that's not in your nature. I don't want to offend you by kind of, what may seem as challenging you on things. I think that there's tends to be a lot of that in the world that, people just aren't given a hard enough time sometimes, We have, or seemingly have, become a little soft, perhaps. Do you think, in our modern society? Oh, I think so. I mean, I look, I'm no bloody, expert in any of this myself, and I'm not perfect by any means. That's not what I'm getting at. But I referenced my grandfather earlier today when you were telling me about your family history there. And he went to the war, and I've said this before on interviews, I'm sure, but I feel like I'm going to bore anyone. He signed up for the First World War when he was 15, turned 16 on the boat with his horse and his bridle and his saddle, and his experience as a farmer at Moss Vale. And or in that sort of not south coast, that sort of Kyama now, that part of the world, dairy industry, and he jackarooed up at north of Moree somewhere, but it might have been between Moree and Narrabri. Anyway, that's my benchmark.
Yeah,
I didn't know mass from my head when I was 15.
Yeah,
and that was normal. I'm sure there's many men and women went away to war, and that was kind of expected and normal, and they were resilient and they got through it.
But how many people of that generation today could go and do that?
No, that's it. None. Well, that great yarn about the boy who helped his father plough a paddock down in Victoria.
Tell me.
This one? I'm going to get names, and I'll get the date right because there's a specific date of references. But there was I think it was a First World War veteran who had been in and out of hospital after the war for some time, and he needed a paddock ploughed, and anyway, I can't remember whether he asked his son to do it or his son just went and did it. He was 9. Ploughed some number of acres with a horse and a plough on his own at 9 years of age. And his father had been in the hospital anyway, so the son went, I've finished the job, Dad. And he said, well, you can choose anything you want. You've done that for me, I'll do something for you. What do you want? And he said, I want to go to Sydney and for the opening of the Harbour Bridge. So he jumped, and his dad said, well, how can I say no to that? Him at age 9. So he jumped on his horse. This is in the Gippsland or somewhere. Mm. Jumped on his horse, rode his horse all the way to Sydney for the opening of the Harbour Bridge, and rode all the way back on his own.
That just speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It's incredible.
What we were talking about, that foundation that young people had then.
And those things weren't taught. You didn't go to like resilience school. Maybe we need a resilience school. Maybe we need to open one up. I wouldn't necessarily be the teacher at it or think I would be worthy of that. But I think there's something in there somewhere.
Absolutely.
Let's get off kids and all that. So farm, school in town, left school, and then what did you do immediately after school? Don't go too quick. Don't jump straight to you and Trish again. It must have been. You didn't get married at 18.
I worked on the land, and I worked for myself, and I also worked for others And I was very, very fortunate to work for an older gentleman in the Woolooma area where I was from. And he was, I think, probably my greatest mentor.
Okay.
As far as...
What was his name?
His name was Wallace Collison.
Wallace Collison.
And he was a...
What a great name.
He was a World War II veteran. And he was quite an older, aged man when I worked for him, but still reasonably active. And he gave me a lot of rain. And I wouldn't say that I was without mistake, because he did correct me a few times, but he was also just a great teacher. But he did it in a way that he wasn't sort of micromanaging you. He just, as I said, he gave you the rein. Sometimes if things didn't go quite to plan, then, there'd be a quiet word about that. And away you go again. But he imparted upon me an enormous amount of life lessons, wisdom, and things that I still carry with me each and every day. And I do think about it often, because that is a very big part of who I was as a young person. So I worked for him for a number of years, and as I said, always actively involved with horses. He was a great horseman, had a lot of heritage bred stock horses. And he said to me, I broke some horses in for him when I was there, and he said to me, well, why don't you stay on and use my yard facilities here? And we were kind of like just family by then, really. And so I did that. I broke horses in there for a number of years, and that, so that bond grew even stronger. And again, he was able to impart his knowledge and wisdom upon me, as far as that task was involved as well. So, yes, again, there's one of those sort of figures in your early life that you just carry through life with you. It's one of those men who just made an enormous impression upon me. And not only, as I said, not only physically in the way that he was able to impart knowledge, but just the way that you conducted yourself as a young man. Mm. And I do carry that with me. And I've told my children, which they're all adults now, but I've told them over many years about a lot of the times that I spent with him. Like the time, and I know this is perhaps not quite on the subject, but...
No, nothing is off topic. Don't worry.
We had a particularly good season, and it was this time of year in the spring, and...
Just relax a bit there. I want to lean back a bit.
And the clover was getting away on us. It was, over a foot high. So sort of mid-spring, getting on towards the later spring, and he had... It's sort of, the country was low, undulating at the front of the property, and then it sort of raised out into some hillier and steeper country toward the back, and we were sort of midway out along the property, driving along a spur, so a ridge, and he said, I think I'll just go down here. Now, I don't know whether he was...
You were riding horses?
No, sorry, we were in his riding his grey horse. That's what he called his grey horse, which is the old Land Cruiser.
Oh, right.
Always rode, yes, we're always on horseback, but this particular time we were riding the four-wheeled horse. Mm. He said, I just think I'll drive down here. Now, I don't know whether he was having a lend of me or what he was doing at the time, but it all happened very, very quickly, and all I can remember is by the time we got about halfway down this rather steep side, the vehicle had sort of got over onto the two wheels on the left-hand side where I was sitting in the front of the vehicle, and all I could see was the ground getting closer and closer, and he's laughing his head off. And luckily for us, as we got a little further just past that point, it sort of the country just sort of evened out again, and it just sort of came back over onto its wheels, and he kept driving without giving it any sort of second thought whatsoever, apart from having a good laugh.
And he'd probably done it so many times, he knew that. He goes, I want to show this young bloke.
Absolutely.
That's a classic. So what was the lesson in there?
Oh, dear. Not to take everything off face value.
Any other, given he was such a, I guess a mentor, any other sort of things that he, learnings you had from him that have stood you in good stead? Stood you in good stead.
Yeah, he was not only, as I said, just a wonderful teacher, but he was also involved with the Scone Camp Draft and Rodeo Committee, and he invited me to be a part of that. So that was really my first foray into any sort of public engagement, and I got involved with it and met a lot of different people, but importantly saw how those things worked.
Community sort of community groups and things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so he was he gave me the opportunity to learn, understand, and be a part of that. And then, of course, I went on and did a lot of that through my life. So, but that was again one of my first lessons in being able to, be a part of a community organisation and know how to conduct yourself.
Tell me, so let's move on to did that I guess it was jackarooing, was it jackarooing or just station hand stuff?
Yeah.
What happened next?
I did meet Trish, my wife. And,
what age were you?
And I was in my early 20s, and
where'd you meet?
Well, her parents had some country. They were from Epping in Sydney, but they acquired some country in the Stewarts area, and that's where we met. And we decided to
hang on, don't
at
sneak
a
away
dance.
At a dance. What I was going to say, yeah,
at a local dance.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Were you a bit of a twinkle toes?
Ah dear.
Were you a bit of a Canadian three-step fiend?
Well, it may have been a 3-step mixed with a 4-step and a 6-step. I don't know, but it was what we could make of it at the time. But we had a lot of fun, and
mosquito. Right?
I know they've been attacking me. It's one on you now. But that's where we met, and we decided we'd, as I said, like to see a bit more of Australia. So we went to Queensland and lived there for a while before we decided to come back here.
How long are you away for? Like age,
about 4 or 5 years.
And did you come back to settle down? Or did you go? Had you married on the road, or did you come?
Yeah,
you had.
And we came back here. We got married here just after we got back here, and we decided to come back. I guess my parents were aging, and they lived.
They were still out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. My father, he ended up unfortunately quite unwell with muscular dystrophy. And it got to a point where he became sort of semi-incapacitated and couldn't do things for himself a lot. And so we came back here and helped them for a while, but then they decided that they really should be, in town or closer to facilities, because the drive used to take, a good 3/4 of an hour or so. And so they decided to sell and then move to Scone. So, but again, probably came back predominantly for that reason, and then also returning home as well.
Yeah,
perhaps more my home than what Trish's was. But again, as I said to you earlier, it's part of who you are and what you're about. So we came back here, got married, set up our sort of livestock business, and I continued to do some work on the land, but then also did some further study at university, and then worked in both the mining industry and agriculture at the same time.
When you went to Queensland, was that somewhat of a hero's journey? Did you have challenges? You had Trish there as your companion. Did you have challenges and kind of epiphanies that led you home again? That you sort of did the full circle and things happened that kind of led you back to here?
Yeah, I guess your parents,
rang up and said, "You better get your ass home now."
You know what I said to you earlier about being the eldest and given responsibility? And when I went away, I guess I wasn't there. There was a void. And as I said, my father became more and more incapacitated. And so I always had that in the back of my mind. And perhaps, the pull of that, the home ties, the sense of responsibility again drew me back here, and it was something that Trish and I discussed, and we were happy to do, and it was a great decision in hindsight, and nothing we've ever regretted. So.
And while you're away, was there other things that happened up there that kind of pushed you into challenging situations, or you learned a lot from, or there were kind of, again, learnings? I keep on going back to those questions because I think it's fascinating what life is there to be experienced and learned from. What else happened up there? You're on stations up there and things?
No, I didn't work on the land. We started our own business as an arborist.
Really?
So I went and trained.
Tree lopper.
That was a term that was used widely then.
But you were an arborist. So you were a professional arborist.
I became qualified.
There you are.
And I also then ran our business, and that's when we first started employing people. And that was our first foray into business. And again, it's like everyone. It's trials and tribulations. It's steep learning curves. But after we, I guess 12 months or so, we started to build a bit of momentum, rhythm, understanding of it more, and it became quite successful.
And where were you based? All over?
No.
More money. Whereabouts was his home?
On the Gold Coast.
Goldie. Wow.
But it's sort of the business, as it grew, expanded from there to probably as far south as Moolumbar, and then as far north as Brisbane, and out to Bow Desert, Canungra, those sort of areas.
And you finished a bit of time up a tree on the end of a chainsaw then?
Originally, I did.
Were you on ropes and all that sort of gear, or you just
because in those days, thankfully today it's much different. But in those days, you had a climbing harness and a rope, a lanyard.
Yeah.
And that was it. You just shuffled your way up the trunk.
Oh, so you didn't have a rope up and over. You're actually just doing the shimmy up the trunk.
No, those techniques weren't used then.
Because they weren't around, or they just too hard and we can get up this tree with it?
No, it's not something that was sort of adopted into the industry until much later. And there was a lowering rope sometimes if the limb that you needed to remove was
needed to be
large and then controlled from the ground.
Yeah.
But there was no climbing rope. You weren't suspended by a rope. The only contact you had with the tree was the lanyard that went around the trunk and then onto your climbing harness.
What about boots?
Which was rather rudimentary too.
Oh, totally. What about boots? Did you have boots with spikes in them or anything?
Yeah, you had a climbing spikes attached to your boots. Yeah. So, but that was it.
Wow. Did you have any near misses?
That's a long time ago. Nothing of any real note that I can remember, but I'm sure there may have been. But
you were here having a chat, so it ended up okay.
Yeah, everything's okay.
You don't have a hobble. I didn't notice you hobbling around there.
No. I think there's nothing of any sort of real note. But thankfully, as I said, as the industry evolved, the work practices now within the industry are, they're world class. There's an enormous attention to safety because it's a highly dangerous industry to work within.
Totally.
And as I said, you wouldn't, looking at it now, you wouldn't even dreamt of what it was like, 30 or 40 years ago to be actively working in that industry. So,
what's your favourite tree?
Actually, an English oak.
Which one? Oh, English oak, Rober. Yeah. Yeah, cool. Yeah. Why?
This
is loaded, by the way. This is a loaded question.
Yeah, okay. Well,
only because it's my favourite tree too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, one of them, yeah. Oaks generally.
I have a number, but that one would have to be my absolute favourite. I guess a number of things. One, they're very slow growing. So they take an enormous amount of time to mature, and often you won't see it in your lifetime. The way that they grow is architecturally beautiful. They are an absolutely stunning tree. But they grow in such a way that they can fit into just about any landscape. It doesn't matter where it is. They provide enormous amenity. They're a wonderful shade tree. But they're a pleasure to be around because they are so visually appealing. And the fact that they take so long, you really appreciate the fact when you see a mature one, just what they've actually seen in their life, because it's taken them a long time to get to that point. And I guess, it's again, when you go back and you see them in the UK, and some of those trees in there are hundreds and hundreds of years old, especially some of those ones at Kew Gardens. Again, you just have an enormous respect for them. The other one that I've seen personally, Tricia and I, are those giant redwoods in North America. And standing alongside them, you feel just completely belittled, as everyone would say, who has done that. Again, what they've seen in their life is just remarkable. But I think from my point of view, the English oak is the absolute favourite, without a doubt.
Good call. They're one of my favourites. I have to thank a number of people for that love of. My mother and good mate of mine's mother as well. They're just beautiful trees, and we plant them in our landscape of Burra wherever we can. Even though they're not native, which is sometimes comes under some criticism because they're not native. And I just say, well, if that's a big thing, well, maybe we should take the sheep and the cattle out, and maybe we should piss off too because we're not native to this.
No. I mean, natives do have a place in our landscape, but
totally.
But some of those trees, especially English trees, fit so superbly within our Australian landscape.
Well, they've been deciduous, and they're great cyclers of minerals and nutrients because of that nature. Dropping their leaves and their shade and the cooling effect. And I know Clive Blasey down there at Diggers in Victoria, he bangs on about the desert ash is a massive desert ash, and the Dramana Heronswood, their nursery there, and the temperature difference that he measures in summer, from under that tree to sort of outside, and it's well known. Okay, trees. I'm glad we touched on trees.
The other one the other one that I'm particularly fond of, because there are many of them here in the Upper Hunters. That's true, there are in other places, but are the Moreton Bay fig.
Up here, Scone?
Yeah.
Get out of here.
And they've been planted, obviously. They're not something...
In paddocks? In
paddocks. So you do see them a lot on the coastal fringes on ex-dairy farms.
Yes.
In particular.
Yeah, totally.
But I've seen trees that are, mature, that could hide 40 head of cattle underneath them, and you wouldn't see them in the summertime. But you are right. You can be riding out on a hot day somewhere, mustering, and if there are stock underneath those trees and you have cause to go there, or maybe you just want to go there anyway, there's a decided difference from coming out of this direct sunlight into the shade of one of those trees.
It's amazing, isn't it? Our tree man at Burra... Oh, sorry, you go.
I'm sorry.
No, don't be sorry.
Miley's being very affectionate.
Miley is a classic. Miley?
Yes.
She is just sitting here. She's quite unusual in that she sits there and she'll put a paw on you and not look at you. We've got dogs like Billy and Red, who's a Maremma, Billy being the Border Collie. They'll look at you and put their paw, but she'll just sit there looking totally different way and just paw as if
There she goes.
There she goes. You're quite funny, aren't you? Moreton Bay figs. I'm going to plant some at Brewer. It's pretty frosty down there, but I reckon
No, they'll handle it.
I'm going to put them into, as I've seen up at up near the scenic rim, at Tomarup Dairy up there at the Tomarup's farm in the stumps of trees. Well, it's just beautiful fungal matter. It's all,
Really rich.
really rich. Put them in there, a bit of protection, stock and frost, and away they go. So I keep forgetting to do that, and now's the time of year to probably do that.
They will handle that without any trouble.
Yeah, incredible.
Remember here where we are, where I came from, it sort of ranges from 600 metres to 1,300 odd metres above
And frost.
sea level. Oh, yes, and snow.
And snow.
Yeah.
Bloody hell.
At times. Yeah.
Okay, moving on from trees to back. And so was that your when you were away? That was your being an arborist.
Primary source of income.
Yeah, until you got back here.
Yeah.
Did you go arboring? Is that a word? Arboring when you got back here? Or did you go? No, I'm changing.
No. We went away for a while and went back to managing some cattle properties, and then looking after our own business and growing that, and then I took on a role in open cut mining here in Hunter.
What were you doing there?
Initially as an operator, and then became heavily involved in training.
Yep.
And
training operators. When you say operator, as in like operating machinery.
Yeah, and then that, and then also a focus on HR.
Oh, yeah.
And working with some of the departments that were involved in that at the site that I was at. But it all became too much because I was trying to work there and then work for myself as well and grow that business, and it just became too much. So we decided to walk away from that and focus solely on growing our own business. But then I was offered consultancy work because of my qualifications that I'd earned in the mining industry.
Yep.
And done at uni. I decided to go and do some consultancy work. I was offered the work, and I said, well, okay, I'll give that a go. So then I did that for a number of years, many years, actually, probably 10 years or more, and that led to quite a number of different opportunities and meeting all sorts of different people, and again that training theme. I was always very, very conscious of helping people, making sure that they were safe, because that's something that's drilled into you when you work in the mining industry. And so we decided to build our own registered training organisation in conjunction with a partner who I'd known for a lot of years and had worked in mining as well. So we built that and had the business based here in Scone, office in Newcastle, an office in Brisbane, an office in Mackay in Queensland.
Really?
And we grew that for a number of years, and we had training platforms in mining, manufacturing and agriculture and arboriculture. And I was invited during that time to be part of a group who the government was putting together, the federal government at that level, with Agri-Foods Industry Skills Council in Canberra, to develop a national training framework for the arboriculture industry. Again, that training and helping people, and I was quite active in that for a number of years. Loved that, and again, keeping in mind that at the same time we're also growing our livestock business, and Trish was working. Trish has an accounting background, so she was working full time. Our kids were growing up and, as I said, going on and doing their things as well. So after a number of years, we divested our interests in the training business to our partner, and then focused more and more on our livestock business, bought some more country, and that was taking up more and more of our time. I'm going through this this is perhaps more the abridged version. There are a lot of stories in there, as you can well appreciate.
I imagine.
And then one thing I do feel very, very passionate about, I became unexpectedly ill. I had a heart attack, a very bad heart attack, which I was sort of completely unaware of as far as health was concerned. I was feeding my stallion one morning in his yard, and felt an enormous sense of just this crushing effect on my chest and lightheadedness, and I couldn't speak, and then that was it. Down I went. So,
And you woke up where?
Where I fell. And I guess I thought, okay, well, I'm pretty sure I know what was I knew what was going on. I thought to myself, well, I'm not going to die here. I was on my own, and I just said to myself, I'll get back and see Trish. So actually, as I said, we have some country just south of Scone here, and that's where it was. It's only a few kilometres, but I somehow drove back here, and I came inside. I got myself out of the vehicle and got inside, but then Trish, I couldn't speak or do anything else, and I sort of collapsed again, and that was it, off to the hospital.
You probably drove past the hospital to get here, did you? Because it's only just down here, isn't it?
I did. All I wanted to do was get back and see Trish.
Yeah, I understand. Wow.
I felt an enormous sense of impending doom, I suppose.
Yeah, fair enough. And they got you there. She got you there, or someone got you there?
Yeah, Trish did, yeah.
Yeah, and then they got you somewhat better?
Well, after a number of days straight in, operation and it didn't really affect me. Yes. Yeah. I've actually had two now.
Yeah.
And
2 heart attacks or 2 stents?
Both, and two lots of operations. But I do feel very, very passionate about men and men's health. And we do somewhat take our health for granted. But life is fleeting. I'm very sorry. Molly's been very, very
Oh, no, she's cute.
But life is fleeting, and we don't have a lot of time here. And when something like that happens, it makes you really appreciate the fact that how short our time here is.
Looking for more information to assist your regenerative journey? Come join Charlie and his guests around the kitchen table, an online community of supporters with exclusive access to the Regenerative Journey interview transcripts, live online Q&A sessions, a chance to engage with other like-minded people and more. Go to www.charliearnott.com.au/the kitchen table. And if you're not totally satisfied with the value of your membership and wish to cancel it within the first 2 months, we will give you a full 100% refund, no questions asked. Now let's get back to this week's episode.
I do feel very, very passionate about that, and the fact that you're given a second chance. I've now, as I said, it took me a while to recover, but now that I have, I've approached life differently. It changed our lives, Trish and I, both our lives, in a way that I guess we appreciate what we have. You place less importance on perhaps material things. Not that we were materialistic anyway, but do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
There are things that are far more important in life than what you have around you, and it's more about being given that second chance and what you can actually do, and the time you spend with the people that you love, and that's the way that we embrace life now.
Well, I think that I reckon that's 2 or 3. Sorry, just getting time codes there. I haven't had that experience, but I imagine perspective changes.
Absolutely. You see yourself and your life in a different light.
So what do you do differently now then on the back of that?
Oh, well, just in the little things like the way that we, obviously you have to change your diet. Obviously, after
what did you do? What did you change your diet? That interests me.
Does it?
Oh, totally. This is about this. What the themes here, just to jump in there, David, quickly, is food, farming, human, and planetary health. Right? Not many people on this planet can escape having some connection to those things.
Prior to that happening, Trish and I have always been conscious of where our food comes from, but perhaps not. Well, definitely not to the degree following my heart attack, which now and over the last ensuing 5 years or so, we've been very, very conscious about sourcing our food. Because remember, when I grew up, and probably you're the same, when I grew up on the land, and I was only discussing this with a colleague a few days ago, everyone grew their own vegetables. They had an orchard. They had chickens, right? You had meat readily available, so you killed a beast or a sheep or a pig or whatever it was. You had honey, so you'd go and you either had hives yourself or you'd go and rub a beehive out off a tree somewhere.
With your neighbour.
I hooked over the fence sometimes.
That's it.
But,
That's it.
do you know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Everything was natural.
Yep.
Now, you fished.
Yep.
If if it was in the summertime, you had yabbies or whatever. It was all natural. And as I said, now Trish and I are very conscious about what the foods that we do eat and consume, and what effect that does have on the environment. And going way back, sorry, this is just jumping way back earlier to what we said earlier, with cattle. Everyone had a set stocking regime. That was the way things were done, right? There are still people who do that. And again, if that's just something that they do as part of their business plan, then perhaps that works for them. But it's great to see that it's being adopted more and more today on such a wider scale. People are becoming very, very conscious of the fact that it's not just the food that we actually eat, but where it actually comes from and the effect that it's actually having on the environment. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No, so changing grazing tactics, habits, and strategies
and so
are being more environmentally,
and that's something that we've adopted ourselves and still practice, even though now it's on a small scale. When I had the first heart attack, we had a reasonable amount of country, but it just became too hard, too difficult to manage that at the time, and so we sort of sold most of it. But and it's not a decision that we regret. We still play around down here. So,
well, you're still involved with cattle. Let's get to that, because the reason I'm here in your backyard is primarily through your association and my association with Highland Beef. And as you may know, and our listeners would know well by now, that Highland Beef are major sponsors of the Regenerative Journey Season 6, which I'm most grateful for, and it was through my association with Murray, and knowing Murray for some years in a different role outside of Highland Beef, that I've been working with Highland Beef for some months now, and we got to this point, and here we are, which is awesome, and loving the model, what they're doing. How did you tell me how you introduced to, what was your point of contact? How did you get involved? And what are you doing with Highland Beef Pastoral Company, David? Well, you got to hang on. You got a Mozzie. That's it. Nearly got him. That's it. What's going on here?
We need the area.
Sorry. Now, that'll give you a heart attack, or that DEET. You know that DEET stuff?
Yeah, no, we don't use that. That's pretty hard. That's hard.
Oh, that melts clothing. It's terrible stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, go on.
There you go, the birds.
You need more birds here, these mozzies. Tell me how you got involved.
Yeah, growing my... I'm a stock and station agent, a licensed stock and station agent and real estate agent, but I concentrate on rural properties. And which I'm coming up to my 5th year now. And about 18 months ago, I had befriended a gentleman on Facebook who I'd kind of known of in the beef industry. And I thought it was very interesting about what he was doing. They were sort of doing some initial sort of marketing, only in a very small way, talking about what they were doing as far as Highland beef were concerned, and that's Tony Spear.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just rang him up, and I said, look...
18 months ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
I said, this is who I am, and this is what I do. These are my passions. And, if you're ever interested in having a chat, I'd be really happy to sit down and discuss it with you. So, a number of weeks sort of passed, and there was an opportunity for Tony to be down this way, and we just met, and it sort of grew from there.
So you liked what they were doing, then you obviously you saw it on Facebook and went, hang on, this is a good model. Yeah. Could you see a role for yourself immediately, or you just thought, I don't know what that is, but I want to be involved?
Just like the idea of, I thought it was innovative, and I was really interested to understand more about the program, because there's nothing around like it, and there are models that have dabbled in beef fattening over the years, but this one's really a standout. It's something that's quite innovative, as I said, and I really like the focus not only on being able to produce 100% grass-fed beef for our customers in the United States, but also being environmentally conscious. And I think it's timed perfectly now for Murray and the Highland Beef team to be able to grow that business, on the back of that. Not only here in Australia, because, as I said, the more and more people are becoming, highly attuned to that, and you've got great people like yourself involved with that who are, promoting those attributes as well. But their customers are very, very keen to understand it more, and if they can grow the word around the world, then I think it's benefiting everyone.
And what's your role? Explain that. What do you do?
Highland Beef, the program is really quite simple. They partner with like-minded producers who are interested in being a part of the program, and we either purchase cattle off-farm, or sometimes we'll purchase cattle on-farm if we can, that are suitable to go straight into the program. So we establish a herd, and my role as a herd manager is to induct those cattle when they come on site, and then to liaise with the property owners during our growing and fattening phase. And as the cattle get more towards our processing weights, then those cattle are then drafted into respective mobs and sort of scheduled for processing in due course. So then we just monitor the delivery, so the removal from the property and the delivery of those stock to the processors.
And how many properties, farms up do you kind of oversee in your herd management role?
At the moment, it is 8.
Yeah,
and that sort of ranges from here at Scone to Mudgee up to west of Gunnedah to sort of Gyra, that sort of area. But quite happy to grow it exponentially. We don't mind. It's just great to be a part of the program and to work with like-minded individuals.
And do you? What's your involvement? How often do you get out front? We're going to go and have a squiz at some after this. Yeah. And is that just because you just want to be? Do you have to go out on purpose because there's things need to be dealt with, or do you just go? I just want to go and check them and sort of keep eyes and ears and
a bit of both. There are times when the stock may need periodic, husbandry, drenching vaccines and what have you.
Yep.
But if I'm going past, or we can tee a time up with one of the property owners, then we'll just call in and have a chat.
Have a squeeze.
How are things going? Have a look at the cattle. Yeah.
Which we will do this afternoon.
Absolutely.
Tell us about the which has come up in other podcasts and certainly with Murray. Tell us about the the price risk. Mitigation of price risk and kind of why might be a good idea for farmers to consider this as part of an overall business strategy or an enterprise or an income stream really in their business. What do you think it's a good idea?
Absolutely. There are other ways of doing business, and that's one thing I've learned by being in business myself. It's not, even though some of those tried and true methods obviously have worked, but there are other ways of doing business. And as I said, when I first saw this program, I could see the innovative ways that they were looking at helping producers to really free up capital. And that's what originally the premise was. And when I spoke to them, there was a strong focus toward that. But it's grown much bigger. It does free up capital because really it's a capital risk-free fattening program. But it allows that diversification. So a portion of your income can be you're not tied up. You don't have money tied up. A portion of your income is even though it's on farm, but it's sort of an off farm income, if you like. Highland Beef provide all the resources, the funding, the stock. It's all insured. There's really no financial risk. Providing the weather goes with us, and it's been great the last few years, and seems to be able to continue, I'd say, for the next year or so. But you've got cattle there that are suited to your property, because we're always very, very mindful of the fact that we try and match cattle to particular geographical locations, so that they do the best. You've got cattle there that aren't funded by you. It's risk-free. You're not putting the money up yourself. You paid a very, very good weight gain rate, and now Highland Beef have moved to paying their producers, as of the 1st of October, paying their producers on a monthly basis. So per head, dollar value paid on a monthly basis. So an ongoing payment during that initial fattening process of the part of the program.
Is that based on average weight gains, or once if they're weighed how often you get to weigh them?
That varies. I mean, some of the producers, because they're handling their stock more frequently, they might weigh their stock. Well, I know one fellow, he weighs his stock sort of once a month if he's got them in, but some of them leave them many months before they do that. But regardless of that, they're paid $4 per head per week.
Okay, and that's just to get a bit of cash flow.
Absolutely,
it's going to be covering those things.
So it improves their cash flow. If they want to, either use it, as part of that program or whatever they want to use it for. We have some people who lease country as well as own their own country,
right? And
then they can offset their lease payments by using those monthly payments.
Yeah. To get back to the geography, I'm interested to know what sort of breeds were, so depending on geography, like what, because I know that there's a bit of a, I won't call it a fetish, an appreciation of Santa Gertrudis. Is that fair to say? Generally, I know that Murray, like he keeps on banging on about it. He likes his Sanders.
Remember, they're Queensland.
Maybe so. The further we go south, the less the Sanders are in the herd. What are some of the breeds, or as you go, just to sort of keep it brief, going south? What are your breeds turning into? More
British, either straight bred British or British Euro composites.
Yeah, right. You like them.
And I did speak to Tony and Murray about this, especially down here. When you can't go pulling a slick-coated Santa Cross fellow, from central Queensland into this really cold country.
Dropping in here now.
And they, expect them to do well because the challenges are quite enormous. But we do have some Santa composite type cattle in the program at Gunnedah. We've just brought some of them into a property at Mudgee. But they are, again, they're sort of Santa British composites, so they should be able to cope with it quite, the weather change, the geographical location change quite well. British breeds, Euro composites, a splash of Santa, or perhaps Drought Master or Brangus or something like that sometimes.
Don't mind. What about Shorthorn?
No, we don't focus on Shorthorn.
How rude.
And I know that you're a Shorthorn man.
Why not? I mean, out of curiosity, why not? Well, not. I mean, is there not that there needs to be or should be a focus? Is there? Do you trying to steer away from the Shorthorns? Is that a thing?
I don't have any
prejudice against.
No, not at all. It's just I guess Shorthorn. Well, it's like everything. There's not as many of them about today as there once was. The cattle that we tend to see more, and because I guess Tony and those fellows are Queenslanders, there is a stronger focus on the Santa Cross type cattle, which they see more and more of up there.
Yeah.
It's funny, in this area here in the Upper Hunter, everyone once was really focused on Hereford cattle.
Oh, yeah, up here?
Yeah. And there were some Shorthorn producers as well.
Yep.
And then, of course, as time evolved, and this is in the 60s and 70s, as time evolved, people started crossing their Hereford cows with Angus bulls, and we came up with that beautiful black baldy, which is probably the best suited beast in this area.
Right. Yep.
And then, of course, everyone wanted to pay more and more attention to what was coming out of the United States, as far as
the
straight red blacks.
Yeah.
Angus.
Yep.
And then the herds sort of transitioned then more to black cattle, which then predominate in this area. And we saw the less and less of the Herefords and the Shorthorns over time. There are a few odd ones about, but certainly not what there once was 30, 40 years ago. And
how many are under dare I say, your management, or sort of under your watchful gaze on those properties? Is there a total that you can?
We have about just ourselves.
Yeah, just you herd managing
us as herd managers. We have around 2,000 at the moment.
Yep. Yeah, nice. I'm just going to segue back to, before I forget, because you took me into your den there before, and you showed me your family. I just want to go back to that before we get back to Highland Beef. Your family's history. You're saying you're fifth generation.
I am.
Yeah.
Yes, and I have 5 adult children, Trish and I, and 10 grandchildren now. So we have our 7th generation up and going.
Wow.
And some of our children are involved in agriculture, and some aren't. So they've gone on. We've given them every opportunity that we can, and they've gone on and done, what sort of interests them. So it's nice to see some of them are still in agriculture.
And so they your forebears, they started here. They started. They came from, you said, the northeast of England.
Yes, as guests of
Her Majesty,
guests
or His
I
Majesty,
think His
back
Majesty
then.
at the time.
Yeah, right. And then, but when they were here, were they guests of? Actually, in Scone area?
No. They
were guests of somewhere else, and they got themselves here.
Botany Bay. And then...
did they find their way here under the watchful gaze of soldiers or as free settlers, or were they just bolted and found their way over here?
At the time, as I said, they landed in Botany Bay. They were transported to the Maitland area.
Okay.
Marley.
Nice, sure.
And, but I think their sentences were commuted, their time shortened, and they were pardoned, became then free settlers, and then moved their way up the Hunter Valley, as a lot of people did, to the Wyabong area, and then to Scone. That was because it's the old, what do they call it, the convict trail that made its way up from Sydney through the Wyabong area, which is sort of to the west of Muswellbrook, right?
Yep.
And then they, at that time though, from when they were pardoned in 1820, they met each other. They married. They ended up with 6 children, I think, 6 or 7 children by the time they got to here, and that was in the early 1840s. And they went to the Stewartsbrook area in 1849 and had a further 6 children, so there's 13 of them in the first family, one of which was my great-grandfather. So yes, they came out as guests, but ended up as a pioneering farming family. And the work that they were able to achieve using just manual labour was absolutely amazing.
Pretty basic tools too. And
oh my God! Yeah.
As far as your grandfather with the bullock team there, it's incredible.
Yeah,
the main street of Scone,
1920. Yeah.
Wow. It's not that long. It's 100 years ago.
It is.
Like it's it's post Second World War, First World War. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. It was 1920. And that was the main mode of transport in and out of... because remember, to travel there by vehicle to where the homestead was takes a good 45 minutes or so.
That's in a modern car.
So that trip used to take them, I understand, 4 days.
Bloody hell.
With the bullock team.
Wow. So why wouldn't you just take horses? Be quicker.
Oh, well, they needed bulk material.
So they're carting big, heavy things back.
Yeah, so they could have taken produce in or bales of wool or something.
Yeah, I'm with you.
But then, of course, they needed to provision their own
Cut
property, and
back,
I think they also provisioned other places along the way as well.
Yeah, right. Wow. That's a lovely thing. Is there? Do you feel that legacy? Any pressure? Are you more proud than anything else? Do you? Is there sort of like you wanted to come back to Scone? You've sort of told us how you got to be here, and back here after Queensland and so on. But is there any sense of expectation around continuing that legacy here in Scone, being the Carters are from Scone, are still here?
Like I guess it means something in the Upper Hunter. It means something here in the Scone Upper Hunter area. The fact that, and not being boastful in any way, but the Stewartsbrook area is synonymous with the name Carter, and there are different areas that are named after the family in that particular part of the world. And I guess they've always had a very, very strong association with the Upper Hunter. They've not only out there but also in the growth of Scone. as well. So, yeah, I do feel very, very proud of that and to be a part of that. And I'm proud that we have our children now and our grandchildren who can carry that on.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's a lovely thing. I guess, as long as I guess there's more pride with that than feeling some legacy that is overbearing or kind of I better stick around a Scone because we're carters and uphold some sort of a legacy or tradition.
It's just
is what it is.
It is.
Tell me, back to Highland Beef, David. Capacity, have you personally got more capacity to manage more cattle and more herds?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
This way?
We'll grow this as big as we can.
Yeah.
And I'm sure their customers are eager to do that, from what I've been told. But the good thing is, Charlie, that it's part of where we are now in this particular time in the world. So, as I said, it's an innovative way of growing a beef business, even as part of what you do as a producer.
Yep.
But it's also addressing more and more those key fundamental environmental issues. And I don't want to sound like a greenie because I'm not. But we do have to be conscious of the environment in which we take our food sources from. And Highland Beef is going a long way toward that. And I think that'll grow even more and more as we go on.
What are they doing? Like, what the farmers generally are doing? What general things are they doing that may have people think, that those particular farmers are doing good things? I mean, I think you're right in terms of the consciousness of farmers and certainly consumers to sort of understand. He's pretty cute. Never had a dog lick my jeans before. They are reasonably clean.
They will be now.
They were. Low battery. Oh, that's all right. I'm surprised it's lasted as long as it has. Well done. Well spotted.
Miley.
Oh, good. So that the consumers are sort of on the case, and farmers, there's I kind of know there's a theme, isn't there? The farmers who are doing this, there's a bit of a criteria, a bit of a selection process to go through.
There is, but they're also, some of them have been actively involved in regenerative farming techniques for a period of time. So they're sort of aware of how that works. People are also, that we engage, are also keen to grow that side of their business and to have that as part of their business plan and business model for the way they run their properties. And engaging people like yourself, which when I heard that they were engaging you, I thought, well, gee, that's just such a wonderful idea. It just ties in extremely well with what the ethos is for Highland Beef and the way they want to run their business. And as I said, not only property owners, but then we can impart or use that story with our customers and the people that we're engaging with in the wider community. And as I said, many more people are becoming so attuned to that provenance of food and looking after the environment.
Well, I think that the good news is, or one of the bits of good news is that the customers in the US demanding that. No, not demanding is the wrong word. They are interested in it. The transparency and the traceability is kind of quite novel. That Highland Beef can actually offer to its customers over there, given the pretty ordinary traceability, as I understand it, in the US of US meat and that industry, that the Highland Beef is highly traceable, and not just like, we know where it came from and this is the farm and the farmer, but actually the more and more farming stories of farming, and what they're doing, getting back to environmental stuff that a number of Highland Beef farmers and graziers are doing interesting things on their farms that creates, it's selling the sizzle, not just the sausage.
Mm-hmm.
to the clients in the States, which I think is fantastic. And there's a long way to go. Not quite right. There's lots more that can be done. More stories to tell. Various and different practices that can be employed and rolled out on those farms. And I'm keen to, again, not being an expert in anything. But certainly being enthusiastic about farmers trying different, techniques. And we were just talking about sort of cell grazing there before, or rotational grazing, or managed grazing, whatever you want to call it, but just changing those things and and not at the expense of production, because obviously this is a production-based business that it's kilos of beef and dollars per kilo. So there has to be a good balance struck between the production gain from running those animals through that environment and the environmental, the landscape management and the outcomes of that, which we know pretty well when grazed well. Ruminants and animals are doing wonderful things for the environment, soil carbon, all sorts of different cycling, landscape function, that sort of stuff. So, and that's what I'm keen to not necessarily introduce, but just keep enthusing the members of Highland Beef too, as much as we can, because I think lots of also good community interaction, within the group as well, like getting to know each other more, doing a few more webinars and that sort of thing, and probably even some on-farm activities. I know there might be one coming up is it October or November?
November, I think.
Is it? Yeah. I can't remember if I thought I was going to be away for that, but in Tassie perhaps. But we'll get the dates sorted out. David, coming to the end of this bit, we're going to do a little Q&A after. It's only quick, if you can bear with me. If you can bear to keep talking. So we'll finish this one and then we'll go to the Q&A. That's for our Patreon members, our lovely Patreon members who pay $10 a month for transcripts and Q&As, like these Q&As and that sort of thing. And we are actually going to, for those who haven't heard it already, the videos that we take, our Patreon members get them a couple of weeks early. So they'll actually get the episodes early via video than if they wait for it to come out on a podcast. So that's good news for Patreon members too. So we'll do that in a minute. We'll finish on this one on a question. What's your genius, David?
My genius.
Your genius.
My particular genius.
Yep. You might have a couple that are, like sit side by side that were related. It doesn't have to be like one specific. It could be the genius of David is...
my determination. I've always been extremely determined.
You're stubborn.
I can be. I'm pretty sure Trish would say that.
Where is Trish, actually? Did you kick her out?
No, she's at work.
Okay.
But my determination, my self-determination and my drive to just do my best.
And is there something that's kind of a particular skill or niche that you have that is rare? Is there something like is it your ability to, is there something there too? You can pump your own tyres up here.
Are you sure?
Totally. Go for your life. If it's bollocks, I'll just cut it out.
Okay,
no, we don't. No, we'll run with it. You can say whatever you want, as you have.
I think my ability to be able to look at whether it's a project that we're getting involved with, or something that's work related. It's actually work related, or something that I have a particular passion about, and break it down and then come up with a way of making it work.
Cool. So you're quite analytical?
Yes.
So numbers?
Not so much numbers. That's Trish's.
She's the accountant.
Trish's background. Yeah. She's brilliant at it.
Yep.
I can, but I just...
Plenty of strength. That's her strength.
Math.
Yeah.
When I was at school, I was in sort of the where they say the top classes or whatever. But
you're a nerd, were you?
Yeah, a bit. Absolutely. I was.
Nothing wrong with nerds.
But math, I was in the second. So
okay. It wasn't your stronger point.
No. But Sorry, what did you ask me?
Your genius, as in you were just saying that you're analytical and kind of. And I said numbers, and you were saying not really. It's more numbers. Is it more like running scenarios or what ifs or making something work? Yes. Logistics as well, project management.
Absolutely, and I've done a lot of that in my life.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Just being able to look at the wider picture, the overall picture. And looking at the goals and finding out what it takes to achieve those goals, and then putting a plan of action in place and making it work.
Have you got a business? We'll finish on this one. Have you got a business mantra or kind of some little quotes or phrases that you like running with? Just like the sort of things that's on your wall in your office or something like that you repeat. They're on the wind. They're written in lipstick on your mirror every morning. You go or toothpaste, so you read it.
It's the way that, and again, I don't want to sound virtuous in any way, but honesty, integrity are so important to me, and that's the way I've always approached life. And no matter who we deal with, doesn't matter. They're key to me. They're just part of my core belief. Treating people as you would expect to be treated. But yes, getting back to what you said about having a mantra on the wall, there's one I do have on my wall in my office, and I've had it for a very long time. It's, if you think it's expensive to hire a professional to do a job, wait till you hire an amateur.
Yep, good call. It's a false economy. It can be, can't it? It's like buying clothes. My wife always tells me about that when I get not cheap clothes, but just clothes that I just think, I'm not going to, these things are on sale. And then, they'll tear. She goes, told you. I still can't justify buying, particular brands of shirts for work shirts. I haven't gone that extreme. But, no, that's a good call. And it reminds me of, chats, discussions around hiring, hiring people, good people, versus, say, a bit of gear. So a buggy might be really useful. It might be an investment of $30,000, like a thing, but $30,000 can get you a person for half a year, depending on what their pay thing is, to do a whole lot of work. But not as though they're going to do the work that the buggy isn't doing because you didn't buy the buggy, but in terms of like often the solution for things is based around a person, isn't it?
It is,
as opposed to a tool or a machine or something like that. Obviously, you've got to have someone to drive the machine too. So
the machine will only do what
the operator
the operator is capable of doing. Right?
That's right.
But it can't give back to you.
No,
a human can.
That's right.
But it can also give back to you in many ways that are quite surprising, because as you develop a relationship, you find out more and more, don't you?
And then the person.
The person.
Yeah, and then they go, I didn't know you were good at this or good at that. Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, I guess you're in the water training for a while, so you kind of get that.
Yeah.
David, we are going to roll into Q&A time. We're gonna have a stretch. You already stretched when you picked up my camera off the ground when the dog bumped it off there, and that's been lovely. That's really enjoyed that one. A good yarn. Oh, I was going to ask you about your experience with your because when I spoke to David there a couple of weeks ago, no, it was only a couple of days ago. It was late last week.
It was.
We had a bit of a check-in, and you have a lovely, rich voice, David. And you said to me, you told me the story about how you, tell me, go on, you can't get away with it. You rang up a bloke about a piano.
I did. It's quite funny how one little thing can lead to something quite much more. And Trish and I were in the market to buy a piano at one stage, and there was an advertisement that we had seen when we went down to the Central Coast, and we saw Trish's parents one weekend where they lived, and there was an advertisement in the local newspaper, a fellow advertising for sale some pianos. When we came back home here to Scone, I decided, after some discussion with Trish, we decided that we'd call this gentleman. And I did. I made the telephone call. Within 30 seconds, he said, "My God, you have a beautiful voice." I thought, oh, no. Who have I rung here? And
you better get a proposal.
He said, no. He said, I don't mean anything like that. He said that he explained to me that he had been involved for many, many years with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra and many other cultural forms of music in this country. And he was also a trained concert pianist. Mm. He said, "Have you ever had your voice recorded?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, he went about explaining to me that, I had a richness of voice and timbre and other technical terms that he used at the time, which I'd never even contemplated. And he said, "There's a fellow in Sydney I know who you should speak to." He said, "Have you ever heard of a gentleman by the name of Grant Goldman?" And yes or no, I'd probably heard the name somewhere. He said, "You should give Grant a call." He said, "Would you like me to call him and speak to him on your behalf?" And I said, "Okay, that's fine." Within, I think it was 2 or 3 days later, I had a call from Grant Goldman, and essentially straight away he said, "How quickly can you get here?" That was it. That was, apart from...
How long ago was that?
Oh, dear. More than 20 years ago now. And he obviously explained what he did and who he was and what have you, but he said, "How quickly can you get here?" That was early in the week. By the Friday, I was in Sydney.
Yeah.
Grant had a magnificent home overlooking Manly, Maroubra, that area. And sort of a small estate, if you like, 3-story place, and he had a beautiful studio in his home. And he ran the Australian School of Radio and Television. And I stayed there. I used to go down on a Friday after the week and spend Friday, Saturday there and come home Sunday. But we'd work all sorts of strange hours. Sometimes it'd be straight into it on the Friday evening and work until the wee hours of the morning. Sometimes it'd be a little bit later. It was sort of how he felt at the time and how busy he was.
And you do voiceover stuff or read stuff to
Yeah. So
when he rang you that first time, and did you know who was calling? Did you turn it up a bit just because you knew it was going to be him? You wanted to give him a really good first impact.
No.
Didn't?
No, I didn't know. I actually didn't know he was calling.
I guess you wouldn't because we didn't have a caller ID.
No, I didn't know it was. No, I didn't know he was calling. And but again, as I said, one small thing led to something much bigger, and it was an enjoyable time.
Totally.
And one of my daughters, coincidentally, has a similar voice, but she's a female version.
I was going to say. No.
And because we were down there, Trish came down. They invited Trish to come down one weekend, and we had our 2 younger daughters at home at the time, and they came down on the Friday evening with me, and when Grant met Dominique, Dominique's my daughter's name, he said, we really should record you as well. So she did some time in the studio as well.
That's cool. We're talking about time in the studio. We should probably wrap up this time in the studio. Let's have a stretch, get back to Q&A. Won't take too long, 10 minutes maybe.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'll pack up and we'll get ourselves to the farm. It's not far away, is it?
No, it's not far. 15 minutes. Yeah,
cool. Okay. David Carter, thank you for telling us your life, some of your life. And I'll meet you back here in 5.
Absolutely. It's really a real pleasure.
That was fun, David. I knew when you melted me with your dulcet tones on the phone the other day, I knew this was going to be fun.
Are you sure?
No, this is great. I love how we didn't stick to there was no brief anyway. If you thought I had a brief, then no, we went where we needed to go. It was fantastic.
No, look, I'm honest. I am. You see me, that's who I am, right?
Totally.
I don't need as a grossness.
No, that's what we want. We want you to be, tell us as you see it and as you feel it.
I'm forthright, I guess, for good or bad.
That's all good. That's who you are, mate. Let's have a break.
Thanks.
Go and gargle. And next week's guest on the Regenerative Journey is Catherine Trebek. I caught up with her at the National Botanic Gardens in Canberra the same day I caught up with Walter Yainer, whose interview came out a few weeks ago now. She's fascinating, I have to say. We talked all about sort of a new way to assess well-being or economic well-being. We're also infatuated with GDP and sort of very capital-based sort of measures of growth and so on. And we explore a lot of ideas and certainly some initiatives and projects she's been involved in around the world about well-being, the well-being economy. And certainly, how do we measure that? The Humankind Index. If you want to know more, you'll just have to tune into next week's episode of The Regenerative Journey with Catherine Trebek.
This podcast is produced by Rhys Jones at Jaeger Media. If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to subscribe, share, rate and review. For more episode information, please head over to www.charliearnott.com.au.